welcome, and thank you for taking a moment to hear this story, one that still sends a chill down my spine every time I think about it. What started as a peaceful life in a modest home turned into something that felt like a scene from a psychological thriller. My wife Carol and I had built a life there, and we truly believed it was where we would raise our kids, Sam and Robbie, from diapers to diplomas. But everything changed the summer our sense of safety was shattered. My twin boys, Sam and Robbie, are 6 now, but at the time, they were just 5, curious, innocent, full of energy. We were living in our previous home, a cozy little corner house we thought would be our forever spot. I had lived there for 4 years, met and married Carol there, and we brought our sons home from the hospital to that very place. The neighborhood had begun to decline, sure, but we still felt safe until the unsettling events with our neighbor Steve. He'd moved in less than a year earlier, a quiet man with a heavy accent and a habit of keeping to himself. His house sat directly beside ours, with 2 upper windows that overlooked our backyard. Oddly, I never saw lights on in those rooms. I assumed they were unused. One hot summer afternoon, the boys were splashing in their inflatable pool while I worked on the yard. I glanced up at Steve's window and caught a glimpse of him, staring out only for him to vanish the second he noticed me looking. It was strange, but not yet alarming. That evening, Carol and I were in the kitchen while the boys cooled off again in the backyard pool. Their giggles fell silent. Moments later, Robbie rushed in, saying there had been a flashing light from the neighbor's window. My stomach dropped. When I followed him outside, he pointed to Steve's upstairs window and described what sounded exactly like a camera flash. Both boys confirmed it. We were immediately disturbed. I dried them off and brought them inside before telling Carol. Her reaction was the same as mine, deep concern. I marched next door and knocked several times. Steve's car was in the driveway, but he never answered. That only intensified our suspicion. Weeks passed, but the fear lingered. Then one night, Carol and I heard our side gate creak open. I investigated, lights blazing, but found no one. Steve's backyard lights were on, and when I peeked over the fence, he appeared suddenly, startling me. I confronted him about the gate and the camera flash. He grew loud, offended, and denied everything. Without evidence, there was little I could do. Then came the breaking point. In the dead of night, I woke to the sound of Robbie's screams. He said someone had been at their bedroom window. Again, another camera flash. I rushed outside, scanned Steve's windows, saw him staring back at me from the same upstairs window. That was it. I rang his doorbell over and over. No response. We called the police not to press charges, but to make a report. If someone else ever reported him, there'd be a record. We never saw Steve again. He disappeared into his house like a ghost, avoiding daylight. Within weeks, we moved to a safer neighborhood in a nearby town. The decision was hard but necessary. We don't regret it for a second. My kids can play outside again. My wife can sleep without fear, and me, I still check the windows sometimes, just in case. About 3 months ago, I moved into an apartment with 2 other women so I could attend college. There's a long list of things that make the building less than ideal. For instance, most apartment windows face a shared corridor where people constantly walk back and forth. So if you leave your windows open, anyone passing by can see right into your room. Still, because I spend most of my day on campus, and the girls I live with, well as most of the neighbors seem friendly enough. I've learned to overlook those flaws. A few nights ago, while I was getting ready for bed, I noticed music playing somewhere nearby. It was mostly pop songs from the early 2000s, cheesy, upbeat tunes that sounded like they belonged at a high school sleepover. Since I live in a college town filled with frat houses and late-night lakeside parties, I assumed it was just background noise from another night of student chaos. I shrugged it off, put on my pajamas, and queued up a video on my phone to lull myself to sleep, like I usually do. But as I was drifting off, I started hearing a different sound. Something mechanical, drilling. At first I thought maybe I was imagining it, or maybe it was just some weird sound coming from the video. I paused it. No change. The drilling continued, steady and deliberate. I got up, confused, and wandered through the apartment trying to pinpoint where it was coming from. It was 11 p.m., way too late for any maintenance or construction. The noise grew louder near my bedroom window. I opened it cautiously and realized it was coming from the neighboring apartment, the one directly adjacent to mine. That's when I also realized the music was coming from the same place. But the thing is, no one lives there. That unit has been empty since we moved in, or at least, that's what we were told. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe someone was planning to move in and had arranged for late-night work to be done, though that seemed ridiculous. Even if repairs were urgent, why do them at midnight on a Thursday? Eventually, the sounds became impossible to ignore. I was texting a friend and began sending audio clips and even a video toward the noisy apartment. My friend urged me to call the police. It wasn't just strange, it was likely illegal, but I didn't. I was exhausted and just wanted to sleep. Around 1 a.m., I was startled awake again, this time by hammering. The kind of rhythmic pounding that drills into your nerves more than anything else. Frustrated and running out of patience, I finally decided to confront whoever it was. I wrapped myself in a robe and headed toward the stairwell window that faced the apartment. To get a proper view, I had to step down a few stairs, which made me feel even smaller than I already am. As soon as I got to the window, I froze. Inside, I saw familiar, probably in their 30s or 40s. They all stopped working and turned to look at me at once. The music continued, but all other sounds ceased. I can't fully describe the chill that ran down my spine. I wanted the noise to stop use, but I didn't want to be the thing that replaced it. I didn't want to be their focus. Something about their expressions unsettled me deeply. They weren't surprised to see me. Instead, they wore confused, mildly amused looks. It was only the next day that something else began to bother me even more. The music. Why were grown men listening to music targeted at kids and teenagers? It didn't feel quirky, it felt calculated. Trying to stay composed, I cleared my throat and said, "Excuse me, it's really late. A lot of us have early classes or work. Would you mind wrapping this up and continuing tomorrow? I'm just a short, 19-year-old girl in a robe, standing eye level with men who looked like they could easily overpower me." Two of them walked closer to the window. They looked me up and down in a way that made my skin crawl. One of them clutched a heavy-looking hammer. Both were dripping with sweat. Their smiles weren't friendly, they were crooked, slow, almost hungry. I froze for a moment, heart pounding. I felt cornered, vulnerable. I slowly backed away, never turning my back to them, convinced that if I did, something worse would happen. As soon as I reached the landing and was out of their view, I ran full sprint back to my apartment and locked the door behind me. One of my roommates was out of town, and the other hadn't responded to any of my texts in the group chat. I assumed she was asleep. I returned to my room, where the noise had finally stopped. Not even the radio was playing anymore, but instead of relief, I felt a deep, gnawing unease. The silence didn't feel like peace, it felt like they were waiting. It was 2:15 a.m. now. I didn't have the energy to call the cops, even though I knew I probably should. I climbed back into bed and tried to convince myself that I wasn't scared, just tired. But I didn't sleep long. Around 3:30 a.m., I woke again. This time, it was the silence that startled me. That strange, total absence of sound. I had no idea what woke me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been watching me. That someone might still be watching, maybe right outside my closed window. The next morning, as I left the apartment, I passed by the window to that unit. It was shut tight. No sign of the four men. No music. No tools. As if the entire night had been a bizarre dream. I asked my remaining roommate if she'd heard anything, and she said she had multiple times but hadn't been able to get up due to sleep paralysis. That was all I needed to know. I hadn't imagined it. But questions remained. How did they get access to the apartment? Why work at night and not during the day? Why did they act like they didn't want to be seen? What could have happened if I had stayed at that window a second longer? It's been a week now, and I haven't seen or heard them since. But the fear hasn't gone away. I double lock my windows and doors. I sleep with a flashlight under my pillow. I don't know who they were or what they were doing, but a part of me is terrified that they're still out there watching, waiting, or worse, already planning to return. I live in a pretty standard suburban town on Long Island, New York. My girlfriend, Sarah, and I recently began renting a small house, nothing fancy, but perfect for a couple or a small family. The street is quiet, our backyard is a decent size, and we're nestled between patches of trees and two county-designated drainage basins, which are basically wooded areas surrounding stops. It's private, peaceful, and felt like a lucky find at first. Our only nearby neighbor is Kyle, an older man who lives with his wife. They keep to themselves and barely make a sound. Across from us is another wooded patch again, more privacy. But there's one house directly behind us, and that's where things started getting strange. While doing full cleanup, Sarah and I noticed something unnerving. A middle-aged man and woman were constantly watching us from their upstairs window. Every single time we were outside, there they were, motionless, staring. At first, we pretended not to notice, but it got under our skin. Sarah eventually refused to go in the backyard alone. One foggy afternoon, I waved at them. They didn't react. No movement. No acknowledgement. Just unblinking eyes locked on me. That's when I decided we had to figure out who they were. Sarah and I walked around the block and rang their doorbell. But instead of either of the people from the window, a much younger man, maybe in his 20s, answered the door, or rather, cracked it open just enough to show half his face. The house behind him was pitch black, and his attitude was cold and dismissive. When I asked if he lived with anyone else, he said no. I mentioned the people in the window. He claimed he had no idea what I was talking about. We left, but I swear he watched us the whole time as we walked away. Later that night, I checked the window upstairs, and there they were again, those same two people, silently staring at our house. I shut the blinds. Sarah and I agreed we needed to plant trees to block that view, but it was already too late in the season. We were stuck like this until spring. Days passed. Then one night, we heard loud knocking coming from a window in the backyard. I crept downstairs and found the sound coming from behind the blinds. I turned on the light, and the knocking stopped. Instantly, I didn't even try to look outside. I just went back upstairs and told Sarah I scared them off. The truth, I was terrified. 2 weeks went by without a sighting until last night. Around 2 a.m., we heard loud, muffled yelling coming from the house behind us. We opened the window to listen. The yelling was intense, angry. Then, it just stopped. Dead silence. We considered calling the police, but Dean, single quotes, we still don't know who those people are or what's really going on in that house. But something is definitely wrong over there. Thanks for watching. If you want to hear what happens next, don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and hit that like button. And if anything like this has ever happened to you, I'd love to hear your story. Stay safe out there.